What are some man, I have this issue every time. I'm getting to it. I had a friend ask me a follow-up question from a roundtable interview that I did for a recent project that we had both acted on for voiceover. And I was talking about, tiers of the industries, tiers of agents, and kind of like how to find work and how to land an agent. And I referred her to my agent video, which I'll link below if you're looking to find an agent. But I figured her follow-up question to me in response to that video was, how are you supposed to get work if you don't have an agent, but they don't let you work on pay-to-plays? They won't sign you if you're on a pay-to-play and you eventually want to get to the agency position where you're on an agency roster. And basically, her mentality behind it is you're looking up the mountain and it's going to be a climb. You've got to start from somewhere. And how are you supposed to climb to this level if agencies won't let you in at one of the most accessible levels, which is a pay-to-play? How are you supposed to juggle that and grow? And that's something that everyone is dealing with, that I've also grown through and figured out how to navigate myself. So I figured I would give you guys some tips on how you might want to navigate that and how you might want a business plan so you can build a sustainable business for yourself in voiceover. So if you're on a pay-to-play, that is okay. There is a Voiceover Alliance where there's some agencies who have agreed with each other that they won't sign anybody who is on a pay-to-play site. And that is their own issue. That is their own battle with the way that the industry is evolving. And I myself have an agent who is part of the Voiceover Alliance, and they know that I'm on a pay-to-play site. So I think even some of the agencies within that alliance recognize that it's not a sustainable or reasonable thing to ask of their roster and talent. That being said, I think the worry is that everyone's going to continue to work in the industry at extremely discounted rates as voice actors, which will undercut the rest of the industry and make it less lucrative for everybody all around. And I think that's where the business planning comes in, which might be helpful for you. So no matter where you're starting, you can sell your services at whatever rate you want to sell them, because one of the things to understand is it's not always about the money. And I'm not talking about morally and ethically and all of that stuff. I'm talking about when you're building a business, money isn't always the priority. Yes, you need money coming in, which is why a lot of people get on these pay-to-plays, because they need something to sustain them. But networking is just as important. Building up your experience and your portfolio is just as important. Don't stress yourself too much about all of these rules and what people are saying because they're worried about industry rates. Start at wherever you're wanting to start from, but have a plan in mind as to why you're setting your rates, where you're setting them, where you're wanting to go in the future, and how you want to grow. So I'll just tell you a little bit about how I grew and how I structure myself, and it might help you. I started on a pay-to-play I looked at my competition. I was recognizing that I had, was starting from scratch. I didn't have any credibility. I didn't have any reviews. I didn't even have a portfolio. I was starting from ground zero. So I was looking at what the rates were for other people in a similar situation. Somebody else who didn't have any reviews, somebody else who didn't have much of a portfolio. I looked at my competition and I set my rates in line with them. So at least I could be in the ball game. And my focus was getting credibility built up. And on the site that I was on, the credibility was in the form of reviews and amount of projects that you've gotten done. Just like with anything else, if you go on Amazon, you're much more likely to buy a product that you're looking for that has 12,000 reviews as opposed to the same product that has 0 reviews. So that's the world we live in. So it wasn't about the money, it was about building my credibility, because that was my first platform to stand on. So I was willing to work for basically anything, basically trading my services for a review. That was currency at that level for me. Once I started to build that up, then I reassessed. When I started to get regular work and I met a certain goal, and in my head it was I wanted to have 100 reviews before I raised my rates. I think that's what I did. Then I reassessed and I looked at where I could afford to raise my rates without cutting out what my client base was, because when you're at a certain rate, you attract a certain client base that is only willing to pay that rate. And what you're wanting to do is grow through client bases. So you have a client base, a lot of them were in third world countries that were needing English voiceovers, and currency is a bit different for them, so they didn't have as much capital to spend. So they came to people like me who, I didn't have a lot of leverage in terms of my rates, and I was willing to work for that. As I grew away from them, I started to grow into, United States, London, more first world countries that had similar economic situations as my own area. So that's one way to grow, to have a plan, to know where you want to go and what the indicators are for you to get there, and at what point you're going to change strategy, at what point you're going to raise your rates, where you think you can raise your rates. And whenever you aren't sure as to where to set it, you look around again and scope out what your competition is. People who are at the same level with the same kind of reviews, if you look at their portfolio, you feel like you guys are performing at the same level. That is how you grow your rates. Now, whenever you get to a certain point and you're like, okay, great, I'm making a bunch of money. Now I'm ready to get more official in the industry with it. And you aren't just working anonymously as a talent for a bunch of people, and you want to start really getting into those industry average rates, then you're going to be looking at agencies. At least this is what I did. So I had recorded 1,500 voiceovers before I even landed my first agent. And when you get to agency rates, it is astronomically higher than what you're probably selling your own rates for, because they know how to negotiate. They're working with much bigger budgets, all of that stuff. They're working on campaigns and things where you need to sign contracts. So when you're looking for those agents, I would say they have rules. The first agent, like I said, that I got was part of the Voiceover Alliance, and one of the questions on the submission form was, are you working for a pay-to-play, which is basically their way of vetting out whether they're even going to entertain you as a client. And the way that I saw it is everything is always a conversation, and you're always dealing with real people. So these rules are to deal with the masses of people and talent that are coming to them for representation. But what you're wanting to do is show an awareness for what the situation is and understanding their perspective, and also showing that you have a working mind and you have a plan and you're trying to get somewhere. And that is going to get you leaps and bounds further than if you were too afraid to submit because they don't accept that you're on a pay-to-play, or to keep you away from a pay-to-play, which isn't even going to get you to their front door. You might not be on a pay-to-play, and then they'll still not listen to you. You need to do what's right for you. So that being said, what I did was I just, any opportunity that I got that was an open format answer, I made it very clear that I'm trying to grow away from the pay-to-play. I'm very determined, hardworking, try to give them a personal connection and make them feel like they know you, and that they see your awareness of they don't really like pay to plays, but you're trying to build yourself up, and this is the way that you're doing it. So I think I phrased it yes, I was on this pay to play, and it was I phrased it almost like it was a college experience. This is where I got all of my experience, and I worked at this low rate forever, and look what I've grown from that. Let me in on your team. And basically that's what worked for me. I think that's kind of all I have to say. I'll keep it short right there. And if you have any follow-up questions, please let me know, because this is probably the trickiest part of the industry, figuring out how you're going to navigate business decisions and how you're going to network. So let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll see you next time. Bye.